Hello and welcome to the Consistency Project podcast. Every week on the show, we aim to simplify the science of nutrition, health, and fitness, cutting through the noise to focus on the principles and practices that will help you perform better, feel better, and live better. My name is Patrick Cummings. Thank you so very much for joining us this week. I'm here with a very quick, short, speedy introduction to the show because this week on the show, we've got a conversation that EC had recently with her friend, Molly Vollmer. You might recognize Molly's voice when we get into this. She's been on the show before. She is the head of nutrition at Street Parking. If you don't know what Street Parking is, do a little Google foo. You will find it. You will love it, I am sure. They talk about, in this conversation, how to make eating healthy easier. That's hard to say. Make eating healthy easier, and especially doing so with families. We will include links to both Molly's Instagram and Street Parking in the show notes. So without further ado, here's EC with Molly Vollmer.
Molly, thank you so much for coming on the Consistency Project.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you're one of the people that I think do a really awesome job of showing healthy, simple, and sustainable, especially with dinners and kids. So I'm really excited to have you on and ask some hacks and some tips that you have.
I'm happy to share.
We get all of Molly's hacks.
All of the hacks. I don't know how many I have, but I'm happy to share them.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's almost the first question. What do you think makes it so sustainable for you? And also, how old are your kids again?
My son Max is 5 and my daughter Indy is 3.
Okay, so full-time job, have a 5-year-old, have a 3-year-old, and you're doing this healthy eating sustainably. Do you have any kind of overarching things that you think help make it really sustainable?
I think one, we do keep our meals relatively simple. My son is going to be a little bit different than my daughter Indy and what they like to eat. So balancing those two can be a challenge. But for me, I think keeping the meals simple and nothing really over the top. We kind of have the same meals in a rotation throughout the week. We might throw in different combinations or different sides, but keeping the meals that I make keeping them simple makes the shopping process, the cooking process, and then actually having dinner a little bit easier.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing some of your favorite meals that you say we have some meals during the week?
Yeah. So we have like a burger night, we have a chicken night, we typically have a steak night. We might have another chicken night or a beef night, it just depends.
Yeah.
And then we have what we call the kitchen sink night. So that's kind of like our leftovers for the week.
Okay.
And then we have our one night a week where we typically go out to a restaurant. That might be 1 or 2 depending on the weekends. But yeah, it might look like a burger night, a chicken, veggie, and rice night. We might do a tri-tip night. And then maybe the 4th night is going to be, again, like a chicken or a steak. And then we might rotate the sides, maybe potatoes. Really get creative there.
Hey, I'm all for it. I'm all for simplicity. Yours are definitely an elevated level of simplicity of your mind. So this is good. Is there any kind of consistent prep that you always do? I know I see some people that are really big on like the Sunday meal prep and they get everything all, cooked and or chopped or whatever. Is there something that you find in your schedule is that you do consistently beyond the shopping? And then also, can you kind of give a sense of the time that you really put into the prep, either on a weekly basis or even like, hey, I know I need to budget this much amount of time for the dinners that I typically make?
Yeah. So Sundays is typically the shopping day. And then what I'll do on Sundays is spend some time making at least my lunches for the week. I work from home, so I like to have those ready to go in the fridge so that I don't gravitate to just snacking throughout the day. So I keep my lunches very simple. I buy pre-cut vegetables, frozen rice that I can just heat in the microwave. So really it's just cooking up the veggies and the meat that I'm having, typically a ground beef or a ground turkey.
Yeah.
So I'd say for my lunches, it's about 30 minutes I've got it down to. Now for the remainder of the week and things that we might need, I might spend some time bulk prepping maybe one protein source and maybe like potatoes.
Okay.
So those take a little bit longer. So what I might do is slice up some potatoes, roast those up, keep them a little bit underdone.
Okay.
So that when I reheat them throughout the week, they don't get overcooked.
I was going to ask
And
that.
then I might throw like some chicken thighs on the barbecue or something so we have an easy grab protein option throughout the week.
Yeah.
So I'd say like on Sundays, we're looking at maybe 30, 45 minutes of prep. And then throughout the week, I'd say our dinners, because we have them down and do them regularly, we're looking at about 30 to 40 minutes of cooking.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I was going to ask that because I find that when I do a bunch of prep little dry or don't really, and I know you can't expect it's going to be exactly the same day for in, but so you definitely will not totally cook the meat or totally cook the potatoes. Okay.
Yeah, and even like my veggies, like when I do I make it's called a Korean beef bowl typically. So it's like some mixed veggies, some rice, and some ground beef that has like kind of like an Asian seasoning on it. But I won't totally cook my veggies. I'll even leave them a little bit underdone.
I was going to ask that. So that's the lunch, even the smells. Yeah.
So that when I heat them in the microwave, the veggies aren't like totally mushy and soggy and gross.
Okay.
And then
maybe that's what I'm doing wrong.
But no, maybe that is.
It could very well be. Yes.
But yeah, and then with dinners, it's nice when we're, if you already have the potatoes cooked off, if we have a busy night where maybe my son has baseball, we're getting home later, we might, say, okay, we've already got the potatoes done. Let's throw those in a pan. Let's just throw the chicken thighs on the barbecue or get the tri-tip on the barbecue and cook up some quick veggies and keep it simple. But usually about 30 minutes on a dinner. Now, disclaimer, I do once a week for street parking, I do some type of recipe. So I don't want to allude to like a never do branch out. I would say that's my one, and that ranges from, it could be a dinner recipe, it could be a dessert, a breakfast, whatever it is. But I do have one kind of more elaborate recipe in the week.
Okay.
That's going to require maybe going shopping for and buying other ingredients that I might not have in the house.
Yeah, that you don't normally always use.
Yeah.
So I've seen, your meals on social media. You're relatively consistent.
Yes.
I think one of the things that sometimes my clients struggle with is a little bit of boredom.
Yes.
Do you have how do you find that you find some balance in either enjoyment or at least mixing up? Maybe you don't get super bored, but how do you find, hey, can I get some variety in this? Even with just dinners, maybe there's some dinner that it's like, okay, like the burger idea, but how can I make this a little bit different? So any sort of ways to, hey, I stay consistent, but these are ways that I look to kind of change it up.
Yeah, I will be honest. I definitely get less bored than my husband. I can eat things more regularly than him. So he might be like, okay, this recipe's a little tired. Let's mix this one up a little bit. Like the burger night, for example, we might have 1 week where we do an actual burger, maybe a burger on the bun.
Sure.
Following week, we might say, okay, we're going to do like a burger bowl. So that might be where we deconstruct the burger. We cook it as like ground meat instead of a patty on a grill, and we throw it over some lettuce and take all the ingredients, put on a burger, but just in a bowl. That's where we might utilize the potatoes I've already pre-cooked. And then we might do the following week like a burger casserole where, that's kind of, you're layering everything together, you're throwing it in the oven. And then it might be just some simple swaps. Like I said, we regularly do a tri-tip. So it might just say, okay, last week was asparagus and rice. This week, let's do some smashed potatoes. And we're going to use the frozen veggies tonight because that takes a little bit less time to cook.
Yeah.
So some simple swaps on the sides, or might say, okay, instead of in my ground meat, instead of doing an Asian seasoning, I'm going to do a taco seasoning. Little small swaps like that don't require a ton of extra brain power or shopping lists, where you can just say, okay, I'm just going to take these two ingredients or this side and this veggie and make this meal feel different.
Right.
And then I think the variety of, we do go out to eat once a week.
Okay.
So that variety might be a pizza night, it might be tacos, whatever. But I think that variety kind of helps mix it up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually wanted to ask about the spices, but before that, I do feel like sometimes people worry about swaps because they won't be perfect, right? But I think I put this in my anti-cookbook, but it's almost like you kind of can't go wrong on fruits and vegetables. I guess if there's some really extreme one, like something that has a really peppery taste or something, gosh, I sound like a chef.
You do. I mean, Cookbook Round 2 is coming this way. I'm so excited for it.
Gosh, that was really like an elevated comment. But yeah, I mean, I think like, if it's a vegetable, it probably can be swapped. Yes. I mean, I think a little bit, maybe with the texture, the volume or something you have to look at a little bit, right? But just greens, go ahead.
Yeah. And I think I think we get really intimidated by the kitchen. A lot of people can. And I get that. But I think you're gonna make some misses. Right. You know what I mean? Not every meal I make is like, oh, this is delicious. And sometimes, we were talking before this podcast, sometimes I might get cooking and I might leave the chicken thighs on the barbecue too long because my kids started fighting and now they're dry. And it's like, well, let's throw some barbecue sauce on. That wasn't the plan, but they're pretty dry. So let's throw some sauce on there and make them taste a little bit better. But I think it's knowing that you might make some swaps and it might not turn out.
Might not always be okay.
And that's okay. That's where you make a note and you say, well, we tried this and that did not turn out well. Google is your friend.
Right.
You can always jump on Google and just say, hey, this is the meat I have. How can I swap it? And, the internet can provide a ton of different simple swaps.
Totally.
Yeah.
You've mentioned you did the bowls for your week or the more of the Asian type of.
Yeah.
Is that a seasoning at Trader Joe's already pre-made, or do you?
No, it's just you typically use coconut aminos and a little bit of ginger. You could use fresh ginger if you want. You could use just ginger spice. And then it's a little bit of salt, pepper, and you could put a little hot sauce in it.
Oh.
Very simple.
Oh, I can probably do that.
You can definitely do it.
Then you mentioned kind of a taco seasoning flavor. I think before the podcast, you told me
Santa Maria.
What do you use that for?
Santa Maria is kind of like a catch-all. I throw it in pretty much everything. You could
It's a general seasoning?
Poultry, yeah.
Okay.
General seasoning I just get at the store.
And then is there any other flavor combination or spice that you feel you use often for some of these kind of protein veggie mixtures?
That's kind of those three right there. It's nothing too crazy.
Okay.
We don't do a ton of like seafood in our house. And my mother-in-law is allergic to shellfish, so my husband didn't eat a lot of seafood.
Yeah.
I didn't eat a lot of seafood, so we don't tend to venture too much that way.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to ask a couple kids questions.
Yes.
Because I think you navigate that really well. I think we just want to kind of mention, especially when we start talking about kids, that we're not saying this is the only way to do this.
Yeah, I think whenever I share things about my kids, I always like to be, not sensitive, but aware that we all have different family needs and different family dynamics, and our children are very different. And so it's about kind of doing what works well for you and your family. And I think you have to tread lightly around when you do share things. It's like, hey, this works for my family,
Right.
Take it or leave it, or maybe try it and see how you can tweak it for your family.
Yeah. We're not trying to say that this is how dinner has. Okay.
No, this is not the end all be all. I'm not a specialist in children eating, so.
Right. Good. Okay. But yeah, I do think you balance it really well. So kind of any general approaches in terms of what you want them in terms of eating and at meals. And I think kind of I'm asking this because what also happens when they don't like it,
Yeah.
Because you try to do kind of a family dinner.
Yeah, so family dinner is really important, but it's something that my mom always did with us kids, and when I was younger, and it's something that, I like for our family. It's just a time to come together after the chaos of the day. We talk about how our day went. We share what our favorite part of the day was. It's always a question we ask. And, it's chaos with a 5 and 3-year-old. They don't sit the whole time. They might get up. They might run and grab something. It's a bit chaotic, but we're working on it. We might have nights where, I'm not going to be perfect, where we have this beautiful family dinner. We might have nights where we come home from baseball and the kids need food right away, so we get plates on the table. But we do strive to have dinner together majority of the time.
Yeah.
I think the things that help me when it comes to feeding my kids, they obviously have different tastes. My daughter Indy will eat things that are more mixed together, like think of like a spaghetti sauce or a casserole. My son likes things more separated. That can be the common case for a lot of children. They get a little overloaded and overstimulated when it's all together. So if you separate things out. So if it's a night where I'm making like the burger casserole and things are more mixed together, what I might do is say, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of the beef and potatoes and pull those out for their plates and kind of separate it. So I find if I take what we're eating and deconstruct it a little bit, if we're having an Asian bowl where there's rice and chicken thighs and veggies, I might just do the same thing but separate it out on a plate. I do always like to call, I forget where I picked this up from, but I always like to put on their plate a safe food. So food I know that they're going to enjoy. That's typically fruit. My kids love fruit. So I might put that on their plate because it's like, okay, cool. They know when they look at that plate, they're going to enjoy that item on there. And as far as like navigating them not liking something that I've been working with my son and telling him is like, you choose what you want to eat off the plate. That's what's for dinner.
Right.
You pick what you want to eat off of it.
Right.
We don't sit there and do like, you have to have this bite, you have to finish this. Like, obviously we'll say, you need to eat a little more of dinner, but we're not going to dive right into snacks. But having the safe food on the plate, reminding them like, hey, you can eat what you want off of it, but this is what's for dinner. These are the options that we have.
Yeah, so you keep the same dinner, but I guess there might be a small caveat that if it is the burger bowl or something, that there might be some fruit that maybe you aren't having.
Yeah, or maybe it might be, my kids like pasta. So maybe what I'll do is if we're having rice, they do enjoy rice too, but maybe if they want pasta, I'll just cook up a little pasta and water. It doesn't take too long. Throw a little bit of butter and salt on it. They'll have that on their plate. So little swaps like that might look a little bit different, but I find taking what we're eating and deconstructing it a bit helps them kind of stick with what we're eating. I should add, I was one of 5 kids growing up. So for me growing up, my mom didn't have the ability to make this person's dinner and this person's dinner and this person's dinner. So I kind of just did that with my kids. It wasn't like I was going to make them this dinner and I was going to have this dinner. I believe in what we're eating, they can eat. Yeah. And again, it might be simple swaps or deconstructing it to make it more palatable for them to be like, okay, I can do this. But I think just because of the way that I was raised, my mom wasn't just like strict, but it was fine. You don't have the ability to make all these different meals. So I think for me as a parent, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do with my kids. They're going to eat what we eat. And that's just kind of how it is. Because I think you have the power, like as a parent too, you're serving the food.
Right.
Like you have the ability to put the food on the plate and what they're going to eat. Now, again, you can put a food on there, you know that they're going to enjoy it. Like my son, he's going through I don't want vegetable phase.
Okay.
So I might put that asparagus on there and show that he's not going to eat it. But what I find is we'll maybe just get him to talk about it or pick it up or play with it. You know, like what's inside the asparagus? Like break it open, what color it is. So you get them at least playing with it, talking about it, textures and things like that. You might not eat it. And that's where we talk a lot about what's served on or what's on your plate. You need to pick what you want to eat.
I see.
But he'll usually finish the fruit.
So is that how you, I mean, at this point, you know, if a 3 and 5-year-old, we've probably had a meltdown at some point. Is that how you kind of are able to handle most of the meltdowns, still having some choice?
Yeah.
Okay.
Still having some choice. I think the safe food helps.
Yeah.
Like that one food that you know that they're going to enjoy.
Okay. I think that's a really great strategy. I think yesterday we were chit-chatting about this. Where does like dessert fit into that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have treats in our house.
Okay.
But I think one tip that really helped, and again, I can't remember where I got it, but kind of taking the dessert a bit off of the pedestal and making it a little bit more casual, I think can be helpful. Now, again, this is where it comes into like what's best for your family and your kid, you know them best. But sometimes rather than it being like, you have to eat this dinner and then you can have this, sometimes just taking the dessert and putting it on the plate. So it might be like, maybe we make my also hard cookies together and they really want the cookie. They really want the cookie. It might be like, okay, we're going to have it with dinner. So I'll just put the cookie on the plate. It's low profile. It's not just like, you have to have this. And the dessert becomes this like, I need to get it.
Yeah.
Kind of just becomes more like, oh, cool. We're just having a cookie with dinner. No big deal.
Yeah.
But yes, we do
I like that.
have treats in our house, but I find like incorporating that into a regular meal can be helpful. It kind of removes that like
focus. The power and the focus on it. I like that. Okay, so are breakfast and lunch a little more self-directed? I mean, at 3 is a little, but still, is it a little more self-directed for the kids to be like, this is what I want? Or is it still you're figuring out exactly?
It depends on the day. Like breakfast, I might, depending on if we have a busy morning, I might just get right into cooking. We have different things we might do. It might be an oatmeal morning. It might be a pancake morning, whatever. Or it might be like it's a Saturday morning, all right, what do you guys want to have? And I'll ask them and I'll make it. We kind of, again, have the similar things we gravitate to.
Yeah.
Lunch, I make. It's the same. My kids pretty much eat the same thing every day.
Okay.
With a little bit of variety and swaps. Maybe if we have some leftovers for dinner, I might throw it in there. But lunches I typically make for them.
Are you doing any, I don't want to say like you're sitting down and having class, but is there any sort of education that you feel that you're trying to already instill with at least the 5-year-old, like protein and stuff like that about what's on the plate? Or
yeah, we have. And I think one opportunity that's really helped us is I kind of try to get my kids involved somewhat in the cooking and prepping process.
You do.
And again, this doesn't work every night. I'm being very, very honest. We do not do it every night because
that'd be amazing.
Your kids slow you down quite a bit. So, I don't want to make it seem like, we pull out the cutting board, we talk about food, They do jump in, like now it's common for my kids to like, if I pull out potatoes, they'll jump up on the counter and want to help chop.
Because there's those mashed ones. Oh, you also do those mashed ones.
I have Quick Safe knives. They're plastic. You can get them on Amazon. So it's common for me to pull out the potatoes and they'll jump up and start chopping, or maybe I'm doing the smashed potatoes. My daughter, India, will jump up and start smashing them. And I find that gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit just about, foods and different colors and textures and what they do for our bodies, how they provide energy and things like that. They're obviously at such a young age where we're not talking, we're not going deep science. We're, talking with my son about, he plays baseball now. He does jujitsu. So we talk about after school, making sure we're getting a good amount of food in, we're getting some protein in to help us feel full and fuel us for whatever thing we're going to be doing next, playing, running faster, getting stronger. And again, even that texture and playing with the foods and talking about it. I find dinner time and prep is a great opportunity for us to talk about that.
Yeah. But there's no rules. You don't have again, because it's the plate, they have their safe food, and if they're just out on protein.
Yeah.
And again, I've just heard different tips of we always make sure they have protein or whatever. And it's that's a nice idea, but you're a little bit more of the, hey, this is the plate of foods. And
I will be honest. We usually typically have a protein, a carb, and a fat on the plate.
Of course.
And it's not like this, if my son doesn't eat his dinner and then after dinner he's like, well, come on, can I have some chips? And it's like, well, buddy, I'll typically leave their dinner plate out and then we'll pull that out and say, okay, we need to eat a little bit more dinner.
That's a good strategy too, versus just abandoning it and saying, okay, we'll have the snack. But like, these were your options. Yeah.
As any parent knows, sometimes you pick your kids up from school and they're really hungry. They have an after school snack, which can kind of bump right into dinner.
Right.
And then they might not be so hungry. And then all of a sudden, after bath time, they're like, I'm hungry. So we might do, okay, your dinner's left over. We might say, okay, if you want something to eat, you can have a piece of fruit, or a string cheese or a turkey. Those might be the options instead of it just being,
chips or whatever. Okay. Speaking of chips.
Yes, I love that. I love a good tortilla chip.
I know. Hard to say no. Let's just say that there's like a social event for children.
Yes.
Parties, different events like that, where there's probably more of the types of food that you probably don't keep as much at the house.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that can be difficult, right? Because you might be setting up some habits or some expectations. How do you even deal with that?
I will be honest, when I had my son, I think I was a little more controlling and neurotic about it at first. Like a little more helicopter parent. But I think that's just normal.
First.
And then, as time's gone on and I just, learned more and learned my kids better, I kind of keep it, I don't know if you want to call it keep it beige, but I kind of stay mellow about things.
Yeah.
I know that when we go to certain social functions, they might have more foods or more drinks that we don't typically have at home. Juice boxes aren't something we regularly have at home. I'm not saying they're terrible to have, but if we go out, we're having juice boxes, we're having some more treats than usual. What I try to do is make sure that when we're in those situations or we're going to those social functions where I know there's going to be more opportunities for treats, I make sure to try to feed them before we leave.
Okay.
So that's making sure we're getting some protein, where we're typically going to go and there's going to be more chips, crackers, cookies, desserts, and all that fun stuff, which I want them to enjoy, but I might make sure that they're filled up on some protein or an actual meal before we go. Because when we do get into those social things, like we go to my brother, we call it the farm. It's just this acreage and they live on it. We go and we have a lot of fun. I know that they're going to be running around, playing a lot, and getting them to sit down and have a meal is sometimes challenging. So I make sure to try to get it in before. But yeah, I'd say like, I keep it mellow. I don't try to go like, you can't have that, you can't have that. Let them enjoy it. And then when we go back home, we go right back on our...
It might be because they're still young enough, but do you have any of that, of the questioning, why don't we have the XYZ food that we just had
at home?
Yeah. Is it like, why don't we have, I guess soda might be an example, right?
Yeah. So like soda is one my kids don't have. It's not something that we drink.
Sure.
For me, we keep in our house. So those questions haven't come up a ton yet. Yeah. I'm sure and I know people are probably laughing that I'm teenagers, like, you just wait.
Right.
And then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We will. I'll have had my son, he goes to school. He's in TK. So I've had, questions about that. Like, what did he say the other day? He's like, my friends, Mom, they have a lot more garbage after they eat their lunch than I do. So there's more packaging. More packaging.
Oh, okay.
Not to say that it's
right now
in any type of way, but there is some things like so-and-so had this in his lunch. And I might it depends on the food item, but I might just get some of that so we can have it as lunch. And then usually kind of explores it, has fun with it, and then we go back.
I think there's something really big there. I mean, it's kind of the idea of almost, not the cookie first, but the cookie with the dinner.
Yeah, you just
have some of it, taking off the whole, like, it's amazing or it's restricted, right? Because, we see that with adults too, when we go to this totally restrictive mindset, all they want is the food they just restricted.
Well, I think I've shared with you, my kids, we have this book and it's called Don't Touch the Red Button. Throughout the book, it's telling you to not touch. Larry doesn't want you to touch the red button, don't touch the red button. So throughout the book, my kids are like, I want to touch it. It's the same thing with the foods. And you have to reel it in, obviously.
Sure.
It's like, you can have candy whenever you want. Like, it could be a slippery slope, but it is like, the more you say you can't have it, the more you'll obsess on it. So the more you can kind of like stay calm about it and just make it more casual. Just like,
right.
Yeah, have a little bit with your lunch.
Oh, that's interesting. I like that.
And I don't want to make it seem like we're having cookies with breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
No, I know.
It's a tip that can be helpful.
No, I've seen enough of the social media. I know how the reality of the situation. Okay, I think my last question is, let's just imagine there's that day from hell.
Oh, yeah, we have the day from hell. There is a day.
The schedule didn't quite go as planned. Kids' moods might be a little off, chaos.
Yeah.
husband's schedule, whatever it is, just not going very well. Somehow you need to get dinner on the table. Or maybe you end up, this might be the night that you choose to do takeout, but kind of what are the 1 or 2 strategies for the day from hell? Like what's your go-to meal?
Oh, go-to like a snack plate. Like okay. I mean, I'd say like it's not uncommon for me to like throw some deli meat on a plate, maybe even throw some crackers, some sliced apples and cashews, and we call that dinner.
Okay. I love that.
Is a fireman, so he could be gone at the firehouse. We might have and that makes it a little bit easier, right? But, we might have just more of a snack plate for dinner or maybe breakfast.
I like to hear that because I think the other thing is you still will have the time where you all come together, but it's still not necessarily the bowl or the lasagna or whatever it is, the baked. Yeah. It still can be almost the deconstructed salad or the deli plate, and that's okay.
Yeah, or maybe we might have like a package of hot dogs. I might cook a quick hot dog, slice that up, or we'll dip that in some ketchup with some grapes and call that dinner. Like
totally.
And I think it's about realizing that those nights aren't, it's just the same thing for adults. It's not making this bigger dent in their nutrition, right? We're just doing what works for us in that situation. And then when we have more space and time, we'll make the more elaborate dinners. But I'd say more of a snack plate, simple, quick protein options that are quick. It might be, again, cooking up a quick bowl of pasta, throwing in some red sauce on it and calling that dinner, right? Yeah. So leaning into a little bit more, even really simple meals on those nights.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, because I keep thinking about how I see this in my clients, and I think that's part of it, right? They don't even think that, okay, the dinner could be the deli turkey. Yeah. It could be with the veggies and with the fruit or even the cooked up pasta, and that's okay because that's what's going to make your nutrition consistent. Yeah. And so even if the kids see that, right, they realize that the dinner doesn't have to be the 13 ingredient stew and the, Yeah. Well, I think you do a great job on your social, which is just Molly Vollmer. We'll put it in that so people can see you living this life and how you do it with the kids. And anything else that you want to add in terms of kid tips or hacks?
I would say just for parents out there, for me, I'm kind of what's the default parent. So a lot of the kids' schedules and stuff falls on me. So I find keeping my nutrition simple allows me to stay consistent. Yeah. The decision fatigue of finding the recipe and going to the grocery store and trying to locate where all those items are, like at this stage in my life and where my kids are at, it's just too much for me. Maybe I will get there when my kids are a little bit older. Of course, it's going to evolve as they get older. But I just say if you are in the hustle of life, try to find ways to make your nutrition work for your life, not the other way around. You might have had a period of time prior to kids where you did the recipes every night and you were making elaborate meals, but now you don't have the space and time for that, and that's okay. Maybe on the weekend you do that where you have more time. So I'd say simplify your nutrition, make it work for your life, find simple things where you have the quick, ready to go options on hand, do a little bit of prep, and know on those nights where you do have to go the takeout route or the simple meals that it still counts, and not just staying consistent with it and keeping it simple is what's most important. So, and you're all doing a great job. It's hard.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much for tuning into the Consistency Project podcast this week. Thank you to Molly for her time. Thank you for your ratings, your reviews. Thank you especially when you share the show on social media or in real life with friends or colleagues. Colleagues is the coworker-colleague combination, rarely used. I don't know why. Thank you all so much. EC and I will be back next week for a brand new episode of the Consistency Project podcast.